Hey everyone, my name is Deena Baldwin, and this is my presentation for WDD 230. My presentation today is on pre-processed CSS. And I apologize if I look tired, it's because I am. As we know, CSS is called a cascading style sheet, and it's the fundamental language for styling web pages. We've been learning a lot about CSS so far this semester, but in this presentation, we're going to explore the concept of pre-processed CSS, some of its benefits, some of the most popular processor options, and some of the features and functionalities of those processors. So what exactly is pre-processed CSS? Basically, pre-processed CSS takes CSS to the next level by introducing features and functionalities. It refers to the use of a processor to enhance the functionality and efficiency of writing CSS code. Preprocessors introduce new features and new syntax, and they also provide a way for developers to write cleaner code and a more maintainable style sheet. So some of the benefits. Number one, code reusability. Preprocessors enable the creation of reusable code snippets called mix-ins, which allows us to reduce code duplication and improve maintainability. Um, it allows us to use variables, which I think is huge. We can use variables to define and manage common values like colors or font sizes in a single place, and then we can modify those variables will automatically update the entire style sheet. Nesting, that's another benefit. Nesting selectors within one another creates a clear and hierarchical structure. It enhances the code readability, as well as usability, and it reduces selector redundancy. Functions is another great benefit. Preprocessors introduce custom functions that enable more complex calculations, making it easier to create responsive designs. And then the last benefit I came up with here was modularity. Splitting CSS into multiple files and importing them into a single file reduce code complexity and improves collaboration among other developers. So the three most popular style preprocessors that I could find on the web were SAS, LESS, and Stylus. SAS stands for Syntactically Awesome Style Sheets, which I think is such a fun name. LESS is Leaner Style Sheets, and then there's Stylus. And those are the three that I'm going to cover today in this presentation. Each CSS preprocessor has its own syntax and its own ecosystem, like tools and framework and libraries. And they all compile in regular CSS so that browsers can render it on the client side. Each one do similar things, but in a more or less different ways. And that's what we're going to cover all three of them today. So let's start with SAS. SAS is the oldest preprocessor. It was initially released in 2006. It's one of the most widely used preprocessor options out there, according to what I could find on the web. There's two different syntaxes. One uses the SAS, like .sas file extension. It's the older syntax. It's indentation based, as you're going to see in some of the examples. It also allows us to admit semicolons and curly braces, which or curly brackets, which saves a lot of time. It's much quicker to write than regular CSS, but it's not compliant with regular CSS. The other file extension, the newer syntax for SAS, is the SCSS file extension. It uses standard CSS syntax with braces and semicolons, and it's fully compliant with regular CSS syntax. SAS basically allows front-end developers to do the following that I have listed here, like using variables, if-else statements for each while loops, inheritance, other computational logic, nesting, mix-ins, and it has a very mature ecosystem. It's got an active developer forum and documentation. So this slide kind of shows some SAS examples. The code here declares two variables. We declare the variables with the $sign using SAS. And so the first one is the CSS code. It declares two variables, the primary color and the primary background, and applies them to the body HTML element. So first we have that SCSS syntax, and then, which is the newer one, and then the SAS syntax in the second example, it is using the SASS syntax, which is the older one. And then the third just shows in comparison, so you can see here the code written in standard CSS. So what's beneficial with these is that you can define these colors as variables at the top or define the backgrounds or whatever, and then you can use them throughout your entire style sheet. And if you want to change it, you only have to change it in one place. So let's take a deeper dive into the SAS features. We're going to start with variables. So it allows us to store variables, which is great for reuse. You append the variables with a $sign. They have a scope, so you can use them both locally and globally. It follows the dry, or it's called don't repeat yourself programming principle to avoid duplication. Um, Mix-ins, which is down here, make it possible to create a group of related CSS rules and apply them to any property. It allows us to create rules quickly. In this example, the mix-in creates a simple card layout and with like a width, a height, the background, and a border as parameters. And then whenever you want to create a new card, you can just call the card mix-in using the @include rule and then pass the arguments to it, which is so nice. And then nesting and inheritance. Basically, nesting is a powerful part of the language. The extend rule brings inheritance to the SAS language. It's incredibly useful when we have different design elements that share some characteristics. With the extend rule, we can add the properties of any class to another one, as in this example here. So in class 1 and then class 2, we just use the extend to apply the same um, characteristics or the same design elements. And then lastly, we've got the loops and conditionals. Basically, according to my reading, this is the most loved part of SAS, is that it allows us to write CSS rules just like in any scripting language. It has built-in like if functions, a for each, and while loops, which is pretty amazing. So, um, less is the next one I'm going to cover. It was released 3 years after SAS in 2009. It's another very popular preprocessor, but it has a simpler syntax compared to SAS. It provides many of the same features as SAS, like variables, mix-ins, nesting. It's suitable for developers looking for like a more lightweight solution. It uses standard CSS syntax with the less file extension, so .less file extension, and it's backwards compatible language to CSS, which is great. So this is just an example here. It's the same thing that we used in the SAS section, but in the less syntax. So this is using the less syntax, and then it compiles to the same CSS as we saw before. But we've got our variables here with the @ symbol, and then we've just applied those variables in here in our body. So let's take a little bit deeper dive. We're going to start with variables. They can be used to store CSS values that may be reused. They're always initialized with the @. In this example, we have a variable for a light gray and a dark background and a carousel item height. And then you can see that we can just apply those, very similar to SAS. If we want to change those colors, we only have to change it in the one place, and then it changes it throughout our entire style sheet. Mix-ins are a way of including a bunch of properties for one rule set into another rule set. So this example here defines two distinct font colors, black and white, and it applies them based on the lightness of the background. So um, sorry, I can't see my slides as well as I thought I was going to when I'm sharing this here, but you can see the background color, and then in the cards, we've just taken the that background color that we have defined. That's kind of how the mixins work. And then less also gives the ability to use nesting, as we've seen in this example. We've got the carousel item nested within carousel. All right, moving on. So the last, although there are many other preprocessor options, this is the last preprocessed CSS I'm going to cover in this presentation, as it was one of the three most popular ones. It was launched 1 year after LESS in 2010. It's influenced by both SAS and LESS. It's a very flexible preprocessor with a minimalist syntax. Its features are very similar. It includes variables, mixins, nesting, and more. It's known for its concise and expressive code style, and it uses the .styl file extension. So Stylus is often praised for its terse and flexible syntax. So you can use standard CSS. I've got 4 examples here. You can use the standard CSS syntax, or you can omit the brackets, as seen in the second one here. You can omit the colons and or the semicolons, as we can see, like we omitted the brackets and the semicolons in this one. Or you can just leave out all punctuation altogether. So this one, um, and when we take the deeper dive here in the next slide, you'll see that really all that matters is the equal sign. But we can omit all the punctuation, which is a big time saver. So variables is pretty clear syntax. The only thing you need to pay attention to is that equal sign. As you can see in this example, there is no punctuation whatsoever. We've just said the primary color is equal to seashell. Mixins work similarly to SAS and LESS. You can use them to store and reuse custom style rule sets, as seen in this example. There's also many built-in functions to manipulate and convert units, match patterns, calculate average, min and max values, and more. In this example, sorry, I got lost there for a second. Yeah, so we can reuse rules sets as seen in the example. That's the mixins. The built-in functions, what I was going to say is in this example, we can quickly find the grayscale equivalent of any color using the grayscale stylus function, which is a built-in function there. Stylus also provides us with powerful conditional logic, just like SAS does. It has an if, an else if, and it also has an unless else conditional statement. The unless statement is the logical opposite of if, or sometimes you can think of it as like an if not statement. So what do we need to do to get started with preprocessed CSS? So number one is you need to install node.js. It's the CSS preprocessors require it to run. You can download it from their official website, nodejs.org. You have to choose a preprocessor to install, like SAS, LESS, Stylus, etc. And then you set up a build process. You configure your project to compile preprocessed CSS files into standard CSS. You, of course, need to learn the syntax and familiarize yourself with the specific syntax and features of your chosen preprocessor. And then, learn to leverage any advanced features that they have and explore the functions, the partial conditions, so that you can optimize your CSS workflow. So as you can see, preprocessed CSS offers numerous benefits. Those include that code reusability that we talked about, improved maintainability, and enhanced productivity. We covered the 3 most popular CSS preprocessor options, each with its own syntax and features. I would encourage you to do your own research before getting started to see what the best fit for you would be. I'm confident that incorporating preprocessed CSS into your development workflow can streamline your style sheets and lead to more efficient and maintainable code. I was excited to learn about this because in the long term, web development is something that I'm interested in doing. And it seems like a great benefit to incorporate preprocessed CSS into your workflow. So lastly, these are the references for the websites that I explored while doing this project. You can always let me know if you have any questions, and then feel free to check out any of these links to get a deeper dive into preprocessed CSS. Thank you so much. Have a great day.